Ali Beth Stuckey, the conservative millennial. Ali does a great job of helping educating those on social media and in the media about conservative issues from a biblical perspective and a conservative perspective. So we're so excited to have her on the panel. Liberals really like to say that they are the, quote, champion of women's issues. We want to hear from you specifically as a woman in the conservative movement why that's not true and why conservative principles are actually very supportive of women.
So I think first we have to define what it means to empower a woman and what it means to champion women's rights. So the liberals say, the Democratic Party says that they are the champion of women's rights, but what they mean by rights are things like abortion, which they call reproductive health care, they call it autonomy, they call it choice. We know it's, killing a child and potentially a girl inside the womb, so there's nothing really empowering about that, and really no one should have the right to kill their own child. And then also you look at things like what's happening in California right now. They just passed a law where every publicly owned business has to have a woman on their board, and by 2020 I think it's 3 women on their board. So that's what the left defines as a right. I find that not to only be not a right, but also manipulation. I don't want to be patronized as a woman that I have to, through some form of affirmative action, be accepted on a board, or to college, or to anything. I want to think that my abilities allow me to be able to compete with the best of them, men and women. And that's what conservatism is really about. The equal dignity of every single human being, no matter your sex, no matter your background, your socioeconomic status, your race, the ability of every single person to pursue unencumbered their definition of happiness. And of course, our perspective is, the ability to do that from a Christian and a biblical perspective, but we want the freedom of everyone to be able to pursue the things that they want to pursue. I don't need the government's help to be great. I think that God gave me that ability on my own. And I think conservatives believe in women being able to chase that on their own.
That's a great answer. What would you say to other women? Maybe give a little bit of background of what you do, but then what would you say to other women who want to get involved, or maybe an encouragement to them to get more involved on these issues, family issues and other issues as they come about?
Yeah, so my realm, can you hear me? My realm is social media. I started with a blog a couple years ago that thankfully kind of ended up taking off. Those of you who are familiar with President Trump know that he makes things very exciting. There's always something to talk about. So I kind of struck iron when it was hot, and one of my first videos was talking about why, as a Christian and as a woman, I felt like I should vote for President Trump and not this person that everyone was telling me that I should vote for because she's a woman and she's going to break all of these glass ceilings. But exactly for the reasons that you listed, I knew that women's issues are so much more than abortion and all of these specifically gender issues that the left wanted us to believe. So I just said, here's why, as a woman, as an American, as a conservative, I think President Trump is going to be so much better for us economically, domestically, in every single capacity than Hillary Clinton would be. And so that kind of put me on the map, and then from there I've built a platform speaking not only about political issues, but really how we can approach the cultural changes that have been happening in society really since the turn of the century from a biblical perspective. So I have a podcast that does that. It's mostly reaching high school, college, and 20-something women, just about the lies that we're believing in culture and what God's Word has to say about these things. And the response has been really amazing. And what I've found is that people are hungry for truth, and they're hungry for biblical truth. I think so many times we kind of brush millennials off to the side and brush college students off to the side as, they're just ignorant, they're going to be stubborn in their ways, they don't even want to learn anything. That's not necessarily true. A lot of them just don't know exactly what you were saying. They just don't know. They're ignorant, and all they're doing is filling their void of ignorance with whoever is willing to teach them. So if that's their professor, they're going to learn from their professor. If that's a celebrity, they're going to learn from a celebrity. If that's social media, CNN, whatever it is, they're going to learn from those outlets. So it's our job, and particularly young conservatives' job, to fill in that gap of ignorance with truth. And so that's what I've tried to do in a hopefully entertaining and a compelling and relatable way, that, hey, I'm not what you typically think of when you think of the Republican Party. A lot of times people have this dumb stereotype in their head that it's, only one type of, rich business, white man, tycoon, not that there's anything wrong with that, but that no one else exists within conservatism. And I think it's important that we continue to break those stereotypes and say, no, here's why as a young person, as a sort of recent college grad, as a millennial, conservatism makes sense. It's not because I'm some rich old white guy. It's because it makes sense for the individual. It makes sense for the poor person. It makes sense for the marginalized. It makes sense for the person of every background, and here's why, specifically from a biblical perspective. So I think it's one, information, filling in that gap of ignorance, but also emboldening them by being an example, by saying, it's okay to stick up for a biblical definition of marriage. It's okay to talk about this really scandalous gender issue. It's okay to talk about immigration and the importance of securing our borders. Especially right now when the social justice movement is really infiltrating the church in what I think is a very dangerous and manipulative way. I'm seeing more and more young people buying into this idea that the church is an institution of social justice, that Jesus himself was a socialist, all of these lies that Satan just loves to seep into the church. And I think it's very important that we speak out boldly about those things, that no, here's the biblical definition of justice, and here is, our role as Christians in this world. So information, emboldening, and then obviously involvement, and just showing that through example.